Good morning. Welcome to the Rusted Garden. Welcome to Garden Grounds. We'll get started in like 1 minute. If you have questions, please throw them out there now and just put question in front of it. We get a lot of people coming through the chat, so sometimes it's hard for me to pick out the questions, but just write question and then whatever topic about vegetable gardening you'd like an answer on, just, drop that question. Garden Grounds, I do this every second Thursday and fourth Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. It is a public Q&A, and again, it's everything about vegetable gardening. All right, give me a second here to get set up, and we'll get started in about 1 minute. All right, so let's take the first question. And I'm also going to talk about, I usually talk about a light topic or something like that in addition to answering the question. So today's about creating a planting hole. It's a way to just conserve resources, save some money, get your transplants off to a great start. So first question is from Eaglets. And for caterpillars, do you recommend BT killer or spinosad? Spelling is correct. So you can manage caterpillars, chewing worms, caterpillars. A lot of times they come on your brassicas. That white butterfly that flies around in this psychotic manner is always around here in Maryland from when it warms up like right now all the way through September. So it's always laying eggs. Those worms will chew the leaves, devastates kales, collards, broccoli, etc. James, thank you very much. I appreciate the super chat. And if you have a question and you want to get it to the top, a super chat helps. I answer them right away, but we'll get to that in a second. So they're devastating. There's really two main ways to deal with them. You can spray BT, which is organic, or you can spray neem oil, which is organic, and that coats the leaves. When they eat that, shuts their stomach down, and they die off in a couple of days. Or you can put down an insect dust. You could use a chemical dust like 7, if you're okay with that. Highly effective. You could use an organic dust like spinosad, or that comes in like Captain Jack's dead bug dust. They work too. The dust contacts the insect, they die off. Sometimes you use a combination of both. I don't recommend one over the other. If there's a big infestation or you don't catch it right away, I recommend dust. That will quickly kill them off. If you're trying to do more of a regular spraying every 10 to 14 days, the spray is better. It just, even if it's an organic insect dust or a chemical insect dust, it kills all insects, good and bad. So the sprays really only affect the insects, the caterpillars that chew the leaves. So there's a little more safety involved. So just to recap, if you're spraying every 10 to 14 days, BT or neem oil. I do sell neem oil at my seed shop. You can find the seed shop linked in my video description. If you have an infestation, the dust works really well, the insect dust. Or if you just want to kind of do the dust every 10, 14 days, you can do that too. Just keep in mind that the dust can harm good insects. So the public Q&As that I do on Thursdays get pretty busy. So again, put question out there if you have a question. If you want to, donate, do a super chat, that will bring your question up right away, and I will answer it. Also, I have perk memberships. You'll see people with stars next to their name, and that's a monthly fee you pay. I don't know, I think I charge like $7 or $8, but I do 4 mentoring Q&As. The groups are much smaller, like 20 or 30 people. Do a couple live classes, do a Grow as We Grow series where people can send in videos of their garden. I put them together and we do a premiere launch once a month. And, if you like this format, and this is a great way for you to learn, the mentoring Q&A classes, I do at least 4 a month, and they're small, so you can really get your questions answered. All right, so let me get back to the questions here. Hold on. Susan, my cucumber seedlings are not looking healthy. What could I be doing wrong? You might not be doing anything wrong. I don't know if you're talking about seedlings in the ground, or if they're getting started indoors. Indoors, they should be perky and looking good because it's nice and warm. If you put your cucumbers out now into the earth, they really love when the soil temperatures are more 60, 70 degrees in that top couple of inches. And how do you know when your soil temperature is right? Well, when your nights are staying in the upper 50s and the days are getting into the 70s and you're getting warm rain, that top 2, 4, 6 inches warms up. That's what your cucumbers want, your tomatoes, your peppers, your squash, your zucchini. So if you put them out too early and you're getting nights into the 40s or you're getting days into the 50s, sometimes the soil temperature just isn't warm enough, so your transplants will struggle and look weak. You can always give them a drink of water-soluble fertilizer. That means the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium is going to be immediately available to the plant, and that will give them nitrogen. Nitrogen is what they need mostly when they're getting started as seedlings, when they're getting growing, and that can help perk them up and get them growing. I just want to say good morning to everybody. I see a lot of people rolling in. If I miss your question, I apologize. Please go ahead and throw it back up into the chat. Amy, this is my 4th year attempting to grow eggplant in Kansas City, Missouri. Last year they sprouted but never grew large or blossomed before dying. So that's probably a good segue into the planting hole. The planting hole is just digging a space. I'll be doing videos on this, either this week or next week. But you dig a hole 10, 12 inches wide, 10, 12 inches deep. In there, you add in your amendments. You could put in some peat moss. You could put in your compost. Combination of both. Mix in the soil you take out. Throw in a handful of organic granular fertilizer. You don't have to be perfect. It doesn't need perfect measures. If you like worm castings, throwing in a handful of worm castings, kind of mixing it through and getting a nice fluffy soil setup that holds water, that has nutrients in it, is a great way to plant your eggplant, any transplant really, your eggplant, tomatoes, peppers. Water it in with a water-soluble fertilizer. You've set up a beautiful planting hole. The benefit of that planting hole is if you have like a 4x8 raised bed and maybe you don't have the best soil, you don't have to spend a lot of money to get all that 32 square feet set up. 4 times 8 is 32. You can just do 1 foot planting hole. So if you're doing like 8, say, tomato plants and you're packing them in there, 8 planting holes, load up the planting hole with the good resources. That gets the plants off to a great start. The roots spread out to the rest of the garden. They go deep into the soil. They get what they need. Use compost, grass clippings, if you don't have compost, leaves, any kind of mulch, and that will help develop the rest of your soil, but you've got this beautiful planting hole set up. That can help with the eggplant. The eggplant are, again, warm weather crops. You've tried it for 4 years. I don't know why they keep dying. They're pretty hardy, generally speaking. I would try and do the planting hole. Really kind of get that hole set up with extra fertilizer, some peat moss, and get it going. Water it in with a water-soluble fertilizer. But I would have to know more. I'd kind of have to see how things are growing, to help you out a little bit more. Sorry, I can't be more specific. Holly, with a small garden, how important is crop rotation? 0. Finding it hard to find new places for everything, taking into consideration companion planting, etc. So crop rotation does not need to be done in a home garden. And here's the reason. Any insect on the right side of your garden is going to figure out how to get over to the left side of the garden. So usually there's not enough distance to really switch it up to protect from diseases and insects. Remember, when you first started your garden, they weren't there, they showed up. Diseases, insects hang out on other plants, they overwinter on host plants, they fly in, they find your plants. For nutritional reasons, sometimes on bigger farms or small scale farming, they rotate crops because the plants have sucked the nutrients out of this side of the farm or the field, so they move them over to here. In a home garden, we're constantly adding in water-soluble fertilizers, compost, organic fertilizers. So we are really already keeping that nutrition up in the soil. So there's really no benefit of moving your crops around. I do not rotate my crops. I've never rotated my crops, and I've never really had a problem. For disease prevention and pest prevention, your best strategy is to have a plan in place. So like we were saying earlier, spray every 2 weeks with a spray. Distance your plants a little bit more, inspect your plants. But it's really, prevention is really your key to managing down pests and managing down diseases. All right, looking for some questions. Thank you, Jamie. Very much appreciate that. Abgrim77. And and you guys, like I caught this one, but make sure you put question in front, or I'm probably going to miss some of your questions. Is it too late to start Roma tomatoes by seed? No, I don't know what zone you're in, but Roma tomatoes are determinate variety tomatoes. They kind of set fruit and do their thing within 70 days. So you can start them by seed now in a container, grow a transplant. You can probably even direct seed them. Here in Maryland, I can plant tomato seeds really now, and I get May, June, July, August, September, 5 months. So it's 150 days. So I could direct seed the Roma tomatoes in there. When you have tomatoes that might take 100 days to mature, 110 days, that's a variety maybe you can't, but there's plenty of other varieties that have a shorter time to mature. AM Gardening, have you heard about the seed snail method of starting seeds? If so, do you plan to use it? I have not heard of it. It's the first time I even heard that. I thought we were going to be talking about ways to combat snails in the garden. So I don't know what it is. I'm going to look it up. Feel free to share it with people if you'd like. Paul, caught your question too. And again, I know you guys are coming in. Big 3 red questions I see, or the word question helps me catch your question. I started peppers way too early, but they've been inside in their final 5-gallon grow bag. Should I let the flowers stay or keep picking them? Been about 3 weeks now. So let me just digest this question. If your peppers were in small containers and they're flowering, I would remove the flowers. You need a nice large root system, and you don't want a small root system supporting pepper and flower growth. If they're actually in the 5-gallon grow bag that they're going to stay in, that's enough room for them to root out. I would leave the flowers. If you feel like it may impact them, remove some of them. Either way, once you get them outside with or without flowers, they're going to take off because you're going to have a nice big root system. Everything will catch up. You would get more flowers and stuff like that. But because they're in the final 5-gallon grow bag, thank you for including that, I think you're okay. Lloyd, can any sweet potato grow in 7A? I grew slips but worried they won't produce. Yes, they can. I've grown sweet potatoes before. You really want to get the slips in May. They need May, June, July, August, and into September, and you will get sweet potatoes. Mabel, should I soak my watermelon seeds before planting? No, there's no need to do that. Just water them in well when you put them in the ground. Amy, thank you for the super chat. Let me just figure out where I am here. Again, because so many people come through this public live, make sure you put question in front. And I will stay on a good 45 minutes, maybe an hour to answer as many questions as I can. But the chat just blew by, so I need to find out where I was. Okay, Fit Girl, do you recommend a particular fungicide or fungicide to treat gray mold on strawberry plants? I'm just thinking. No, I haven't gotten it, but the key is to pick a antifungal and spray early, So if it shows up, let's just say on today's date, April 25th, and you've made notes and you know that's when it shows up, you want to start spraying a good 2 weeks beforehand. Get it onto the leaves. Any antifungal that you use, it's really more so on our regular routine and spraying that makes the difference. I thought for a second, certain things I may use a non-organic antifungal when the fruit's not present or on a fruit that's easy to wash. They sometimes are just better and they stay on the leaves and they protect the plant. But for strawberries, because I don't really wash them, I rinse them, I wouldn't want anything that's not organic on the berry itself. So I would go with a organic, probably copper fungicide. Gray mold I'm not really familiar with. Even a baking soda spray could help. But, those are my general thoughts. Brent, thank you for talking about perk memberships. And again, for people just coming in, this is the public Q&A I do every second and fourth Thursday, 11 a.m. Stay on for about 45 minutes, talk about a light topic, and then I just will answer as many questions as I can about vegetable gardening. The perk memberships are smaller groups, 20 to 30 people. The people in the group are very smart. They help with the questions also. And I do in the perk memberships, and you can just find the join button on my YouTube page. That's how you join. 4 Q&As, 2 live classes, a Grow as We Grow series, and I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. James, when potting transplants into a bigger container, is there anything wrong with potting them in organic soil that has natural fertilizer added? How low do the grow lights need to be on your bigger plants? So when you're growing under lights, you want the lights to be 2-3 inches, depending on the intensity of your lights, over the seed starts before they germinate. You want them to germinate into bright light. Generally speaking, when the plants get to be, I don't know what that is, 3 inches, 4 inches tall, you can actually raise the lights to a good 6 inches above them. So as the plants are bigger, the light is less important, so you can raise the lights. When potting transplants into bigger containers, I'm reading the question again. Is there anything wrong with potting them in organic soil? No, you can pot them up. I mean, that's fine. Organic soil, I don't have time to talk about it, but it's sort of a myth, Chemical fertilizers or natural fertilizers aren't going to harm your plants. Organic gardening, for me, really takes hold when I get everything out into the garden. And for me, it's using compost. Knowing what sprays I put down that are organic versus, the non-organic sprays. Oh, I was on Grow Big TV, if you guys want to check out their YouTube channel. And I had a really good time with really just talking about vegetable gardening. It was a 2-hour sort of video podcast. So check out Grow Big TV. And you'll see Joe and Corky there. All right, I am trying to find where I was again in the chat. Sorry. All right, Bruce, what do you do or what do you recommend for controlling pill bugs? So pill bugs, I never really had a control, except recently I've been talking about using baited pellets is what I want to say, for slugs and snails. They're either baited with iron phosphate or with sulfur. They are organic. You can find them anywhere, really. And people said that the pill bugs were eating the baits and it was killing off the pill bugs. So I would go ahead and try some of the baited slug and snail baits with iron phosphate or sulfur. You can find them very easily online. Look for that as the ingredients. You don't pile it up, you just scatter it widely. With pill bugs, you kind of know where they are, so I would just sprinkle more in that general area. For snails and slugs, you just scatter it everywhere. And people said, many people actually, like a half a dozen, said that it works for pill bugs. Question, white fuzz is mold, what brings it? So white fuzz isn't probably a mold. It's probably a fungus, but it's close. Spores, the right temperature and moisture, usually in the house, you get white fuzz on your seed starts. And it's always just present. Some of the ways that I talk about growing indoors is I make my own seed starting mix. But if you buy a seed starting mix, put it in a container, saturate it with boiling water, it kills out everything in there. You don't need soil life for seed starts. You need soil life once you get them out into the garden and take care of them and all that. So boiling water does the trick. Also, you can take your seed starts outside and give them like 20 or 30 minutes worth of sun. Sunlight really is an antiseptic against fungi and molds sometimes, and it helps kill them off. Mabel, no, it's not true. If you remove the first flowers on a pepper plant, they will produce more. Too many factors come into play. Soil warmth, the conditions of your soil, everything, just if you got them outside and the plants are small, maybe remove some of the flowers. But that's just to allow them to concentrate their energy into growing and not producing peppers. But if the plant's big enough and you feel like it's good, leave the flowers on there. When potting transplants into a big... Oh, we already got that one. Jay, please help me. How do I fertilize peas in containers from start to finish harvest? I'm an indoor grower. So that is kind of a big question. I don't grow indoors to size, only for seed starts. Indoors, I would use a water-soluble fertilizer. Indoors, I would use the chemical types because fish emulsion stinks unless you can find a great organic fertilizer that doesn't smell. I like AgroThrive. I'm affiliated with them. It smells less, and that's probably better for indoors. But I would go with the chemical type because it covers everything, and I use it at a reduced rate, maybe half. But I would just water them in to start, and then, I can't really tell you if it's once a week or every 2 weeks, but at least every 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the size, I would give them some of that fertilizer. But I can't really answer because I don't grow them indoors. Missy, fall garlic with the warmer early spring. My greens are extremely long. Would trimming the greens help or harm them? You do not need to trim them. The plants know what to do. Let them get floppy. Sometimes they get a little bit beat up because the temperatures are changing. Just let the plant do what it wants. You're off to a good start. You got the green growing. You're going to have the bulbs growing, the cloves growing. Just let them be. Is it too late to transplant small brassicas in Maryland? For some plants, I think it is. So Maryland goes from cool, which is what the brassicas like, to warm soil, hot temperatures really quickly. So some things that you can grow now are kale. They will grow through the summer. Collards may grow for a good time, but they're going to usually flower. You probably missed it for broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels. You could probably put in some cabbage. If you do want to try and give them a try now, and some of the ones that I mentioned that you can't, you'd want to put them in a place where you can put a shade cloth over them. That's going to cool the soil temperature. That's how plants get the signal to flower, bolt, bud, and change form. So by using the shade cloth and mulch, you can keep the roots cooler, the soil cooler, and it gives you more time for the brassicas to form. Harmony, I planted my potatoes using your method. It's been about 2 weeks. Don't see any greenery. Be patient. You can always dig in, check out what's going on with the potato. As long as it, didn't mold or get mushy, you're going to be fine. My potatoes are started coming out over the last 10 days or so. And when I looked actually this morning, I'm looking out my window because that's where my garden is. They've all kind of broken the surface by about that much. So I think potatoes, from when you put them in the ground, actually depending on your temperatures, if they weren't chitted, which means you didn't start the greenery growing, it could take a good 4 weeks before they break the surface. Oh, You can hear my dogs. That means we have an Amazon delivery going. They believe that they are really defending my property from UPS, the mailman, and Amazon trucks. Just trying to find the next question. Lambert, how do I get my onions to bulb? Longtime subscriber, thanks for sharing your wisdom. You can't. So all you can do is plant the onions in a timely manner. And onions bulb based on the amount of daylight. So you have short day onions, which these numbers aren't right, but if you look up let me just think. You don't want to look up zones. Sometimes it gets confusing. You're actually looking up onion zones, not growing zones. And it will tell you short day, intermediate day, and long day. So short day is shorter amounts of sun, 8 to 10 hours. Intermediate is like 10 to 12. And then long days are like 14 hours or more. And as you go up or down, the US, the daylight changes into Canada. At some points they have tons of light. So they bulb up as the days get longer and brighter. So they're only going to bulb up based on that signal from nature. So if you accidentally plant long day onions and you're in a short day zone, you're not going to get enough hours of daylight for those onions to bulb up. So you want to try and match the onion variety to your onion growing zone. If you're in doubt, try and buy an intermediate variety. They have a range that's close to both of those, and that should make a difference. But there's nothing that you can do physically with fertilizers or anything to get your onions to bulb up. All right, just coming through, looking for questions. So this is the point where now that we're a good 26 minutes in, it's really important that you put question in front of your question, or I'm not going to see it because so much is going on. All right, so I'm at Forging Freedom TV. I got a garden bed full of comfrey, chives, and grass. No hope of getting the grass out. Think lemon balm would be robust enough to plant in the rest of the bed to choke out the grass. So the strategy would be, something that grows through the grass, shades the grass dies out. Depends on the variety of grass. The answer is, I think that it could, but it depends on the variety of grass. I mean, it's still going to come up. The lemon balm will really blanket and cover it. It's going to weaken the grass, might make it easier to remove, but I feel like the grass is going to keep coming back. I take it that you have comfrey and chives in there, so you want to keep them. If it's possible, I would get pieces of cardboard, and where you have the comfrey or the chives, unless they're like really scattered everywhere, just go around the crops that you want, put down 2 layers of cardboard, cover that grass, put like 4 inches of any kind of cheap soil or something on top of there. That will kill off a lot of the grass. You could seed on top of it with lemon balm. It's going to quickly grow through the cardboard into the soil so that you're going to get the best of sort of both worlds, if that helps. The cardboard will kill out the grass. You're putting down, probably even 2 inches. Probably don't need 4 inches of soil. You're putting seeds in there. The roots will grow through the cardboard, and then you get your crop to shade out future grass. I had a lot of fun with Joe and Corky. I think we talked for like 2.5 hours, and they're on again Grow Big TV. Owambo, what's the best spray for late blight on tomatoes and potato plants? It looks like black rotten spots on the plants, which affect my tomatoes as well. Very good question. So there's all kinds of different fungal attacks onto the leaves. You get early blight, late blight. different diseases. I found, and I have videos on it, if you look up hydrogen peroxide in tomatoes, you'll see the spray that I use. I don't want to give you the mix ratio right now because I don't remember it. And then this is the part where I say any spray that you make for the first time, even if you trust me, which I appreciate, test spray a couple of leaves, wait 48 hours, look for damage. If there's no damage, continue with the spray. Hydrogen peroxide is H2O2, a little bit different than water. There's an extra oxygen. When you spray the leaf, it reacts with the fungi on the leaf, reacts with sunlight, changes to oxygen and water, basically cleans the leaves and kills the fungi. So again, starting about 2 weeks before late blight generally shows up, you spray your plants. And then with something like late blight, I probably would spray every week just to kind of keep the leaves clean. If you see spots forming on the leaves, you can, spray then. You could spray a little bit more. The cool thing about hydrogen peroxide, it doesn't stay on the leaves. It breaks down, cleans them, and it's really gone within 24 hours. So you can use it in theory as much as you want. You don't have to use it every day. But a regular spray of hydrogen peroxide works. The other thing that you can do is, pick other antifungals that maybe sits on the leaf. So maybe you spray hydrogen peroxide, you do that for 2 or 3 cycles, get the plants under control, and then maybe you go to a baking soda spray that kind of sits on the leaf. Baking soda changes the pH on the leaf. It raises the pH and it makes it more inhospitable to the fungus growing on there. You can also put down sulfur spray, which actually lowers the pH and makes it harder for fungus to grow. So there's a couple strategies for that. All right. Looking for questions. And again, if you put a question out without saying question, throw it back out there with that in front of it, or some big question marks or something like that. Derek, advice on growing peas and carrots. I am unable to get either to grow well. So peas should sprout pretty readily mid to later spring. The trick for peas, at least for me, is a nice loose soil, and that could just be kind of loosening up the top couple of inches, adding in some organic matter, and I'm just planting them really 1/2 inch to 1 inch deep. Keep them watered regularly. I do about 1 seed every 2 inches, or I might do 2 seeds every 3 or 4 inches. Give them some trellising. They don't typically need much in the way of fertilizer because peas fix their own nitrogen from the atmosphere, basically. If the peas aren't germinating, sometimes you need an inoculant, and it's a bean inoculant or pea inoculant, and it just helps the root systems develop and grow. You don't do that for other seeds, but for peas and beans, sometimes that helps. I don't think that's the issue. They don't like to be in very soggy soil initially because when it's cold and they're germinating, they can get a fungus and they can rot. I just need to see more, like if they all sprout and they're up and growing 2 or 3 inches and then they kind of yellow up. If they're yellowing up, give them a water-soluble fertilizer with nitrogen. Carrots, generally the same thing. I do loosen the soil. I grow shorter carrots, so I loosen the soil to a good 6 inches. Plant them just a 1/4 inch deep. They can take a long time to germinate, so you have to keep them watered pretty well to start because that top inch of soil will dry out quickly. But I don't have anything more specific than that. Linda, can you put soil in your compost? Yes, so compost can be anything. Like I have a bin of just leaves, and it's leaf compost. And then I have a bin I would do leaves and grass, and it's more leaves and grass. Then I have a bin where I throw everything, sometimes leaves, sometimes grass. When I trench out my flower beds, I'll throw in some of that earth, debris from the garden. Then I'll throw in a bunch of fresh grass clippings, and that takes a long time to break down. But why I like it is because of the addition of the soil, it's really great for filling raised beds in the future. So you can certainly do it that way. Question. I moved my peppers to their final location. When should I start using bloom booster? I don't use bloom booster. I think it's okay to use once. You don't have to overdo it. For peppers, a lot of things you read say at a certain point, add a fertilizer that has more phosphorus and potassium, less nitrogen. So you're getting less leaf growth, but you're helping with the blooms. And I can't recall, I believe it's potassium, but don't quote me on it, that helps with the flowering. Phosphorus generally helps with the roots. But the truth is, the plants need nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, magnesium, second level nutrients, magnesium, sulfur, and calcium. And they use it for all different parts of growing, to keep it simple. Adding in higher potassium, phosphorus, yes, that can help. Like there's a product called Bloom Boost, maybe. I don't know if it's the same thing, but it's made by Alaska, and it's a 0-10-10, 0 nitrogen, 10 phosphorus, 10 potassium. It can help. You know, I would do it just once, and I would do it when your plants are to a good height, you know, maybe 2 feet. You start seeing the flowers come, give them more. But the key really is they're going to be flowering for a long period of time. Compost itself is well below a 1-1-1 NP and K. And a garden can grow beautifully in nothing but compost. No added organic granular, no added water soluble, no bloom boost or anything like that, because the plants know how to get the nutrients they need. So you just have to keep a consistent amount of nutrients in there, and that can be done by compost. So that's a long-winded way to say is I don't overly worry at different points when to give tweaks in fertilizers to my plant. You just want a consistent level from the beginning. But I would do a bloom booster right about, you know, at that point that I told you. Brick. I typically put coffee grounds into the compost, but I've also been using them on berry soil directly on anthills. But I saw a video contradicting that approach. What's your opinion? So I don't know about anthills. It's not going to really hurt anything. Coffee grounds in compost are great. Using them on berry soils like blueberries like more acidity, and they have a root system that just stays around really the base and canopy of the plant, and they only grow like 6 or 8 inches deep. So in theory, coffee grounds are more acidic. It can help them. The truth is, coffee grounds on the surface aren't going to really change the pH that much. They are a form of nitrogen. They do bring in good stuff. As they break down over time, they're going to feed the plants. So I don't think there's anything wrong with using the coffee grounds how you're using. You certainly don't want to put like a huge pile around the stem, but if you're just sprinkling it around, I used to go to Starbucks. I'm not affiliated with them, and get the 5-pound bags of their spent coffee grounds. And you can do that at Dunkin' Donuts. And I would put down a good 1/2 inch just all over my beds whenever I was able to get it. It acts like a mulch a little bit, but over the months it breaks down and feeds the plant. So I would go ahead and continue with it. Okay, is bean nitrogen fixed? If so, why do they still need fertilizer? So they do pull out nitrogen from the atmosphere. Sometimes it just depends on what it's going on. Just because it can get nitrogen from the atmosphere doesn't mean it has enough, but it certainly helps a whole lot. I don't have to really overfeed my beans. Anything that I plant, I prep my soil, put in the seeds or put in the transplants, water it in with the water soluble. For beans and peas, I let them go after that, and they tend to do okay. All right, let me just catch up here. We're at 11:38. So real quick, I do have a couple of books. This is my newest book, Growing an Edible Landscape. It does cover traditional gardening, but it also talks about how to use your whole landscape to grow food. So you've got your garden, and instead of, ornamental planting beds, you can start incorporating different plants into there that are edible. And if you want something more on just vegetable gardening, my first book, The Modern Homestead Garden, is really all about vegetable gardening. This is my public mentoring Q&A where every second Thursday, fourth Thursday, I answer questions at 11 a.m. So if you want to subscribe, I do this regularly, and I will answer as many questions as I can find and can see. I also have perk memberships. If you want to join that, you can find that on my YouTube page. Find a join button. It is not as easy as it sounds. YouTube makes it hard sometimes on phones and mobile devices to find the join button, but it's there. You just click join and it walks you through. That's, maybe about 20 to 30 people in the chat. I do this type of Q&A 4 times a month, small group. We meet just about weekly, and I can help you kind of grow, in real time. And the group is small. The people are smart. You get a lot of help from me and from them. And I also do 2 live classes per month, and then I do a Grow as We Grow series. Today I was talking about the light kind of topic was the planting hole. And if you missed it, when you do transplants, you can really put in the good resources right into the planting hole and grow. It is a great way to save a lot of money because you don't have to transform over a 4x8 raised bed. A lot of times we think we need to make all the soil perfect. We spend a lot of money filling it, and sometimes we can't afford it, and you really don't have to. So you can really square out your space. Say you want a 4x4 space, and you're going to put 4 tomatoes in each corner. Instead of buying bags of resources and turning that 4x4 space, 16 square feet, into a great growing area, just dig out a hole 10 to 12 inches deep, 10 to 12 inches wide, put the good stuff in the hole, put the plant in there, water it in, and the garden will actually take care of itself. The plants will do well. Worms and using mulch will transform the rest of the soil, and it's just a good way to save money. All right, let me find where I left off here. We are at 11:41. I'm going to go to 12 o'clock, and then I have to stop. If you want to do a super chat and put your question there, I will answer them with priority. And also you'll see the perk members have stars. If I see a question from them, I will answer them too as part of the perk membership. Coffee grounds, nitrogen fixed. I'm just trying to find where I left off. Hicks, I transplanted my peppers and tomatoes outside in Maryland. Is covering them with plastic okay to protect them from frost as well as brassicas? Brassicas don't need to be protected by the frost. They can take a light freeze, so you don't have to protect them. It is a good idea, and I think I heard it's going to be like 38 or 40 tonight in Maryland, at least where I am. I always subtract 8 degrees from whatever the temperature is, because beginning of the week or over the weekend or something, we had frost, and it was supposed to be 38 or 40. So your tomatoes and peppers definitely need to be protected. Covering them with plastic keeps the heat of the earth around them, and it will protect them from those light frosts. And for the last minute, I saw yours, lady, but that sounded kind of rude calling you lady, but that is what's on your screen name. So just put question in front so I can pick out the questions. How can you avoid the new seedlings from getting leggy? I have leggy plants. Is there anything to do? So it's all about lighting. So if you're trying to grow on a windowsill, every plant's going to be leggy. There's not enough light from a windowsill. If you have grow lights, your grow lights are too high. They need to be like this close for when the seeds break the surface, when they germinate, like an inch or two. If you have more intense lights, like 7,000 lumens, they could be a little bit higher. But when they first break the surface, they need a lot of light for a good 7-10 days. So they stop growing up. They get leggy because they're trying to reach more intense light. So the closer the lights are, the more intense it is in that first 7-10 days. The plants stop growing upward, they start leafing out, and then they're stocky. They're not leggy. So a good memory. Did I ever grow the Campari tomatoes that I saved last year? I did, and they didn't come out exactly as they are. Maybe they're a hybrid, so it wasn't right. So they grow. So you can save seeds from the grocery store. Sometimes the tomatoes are hybrids, so they're not true to form. Heirlooms mean that if you take the seed from an heirloom tomato, it's true to form. You're going to get that same exact tomato variety. So sometimes the stuff we buy in stores are not. stable cultivars or heirlooms. So it wasn't bad. It wasn't as good as the ones that I got them from. Yeah, so the streams, just so you know, the ads, like I could shut them off, but then I don't earn anything. So the way YouTube does it is they have the ads pop up while it's talking. That's beyond my control. Bruce, when starting seeds inside on heat mats, when, if ever, do I turn off the mats? Any difference for veggie or flowers? So if your growing area is 65 to 70 degrees or warmer, you probably don't need them, except for maybe peppers. That's what my house sits at. I use them for peppers. When the seed tray gets up to 80 plus degrees, peppers pop quicker. I turn them off about 14 days after the peppers are growing, and they're good to go. So you're using the heat to get them to germinate and go more quickly. If you're growing maybe in a basement and it's staying 60 degrees or less, you want to use heat mats. That helps certain seeds germinate, like your cool weather crops: brassica, lettuce, spinach. If it's too warm, they get tall and leggy and flop over because the warmth actually makes them grow. It's not a lack of light. So you don't really want to use a heat mat on them. If you wanted to use the heat mat on the cool weather crops, as soon as you see them germinate, remove the heat mat. For other plants that maybe are flowers or herbs or aren't really impacted negatively by the heat mat, really, probably 7 days after germination. They just don't need to stay on there. Christina, can I plant squash, bean, corn, melon seeds in the ground now? Last night was the last frost, zone 6A, Northwest Indiana. So doesn't mean a frost won't come. But since you're talking about seeds and not transplants, I would definitely put the seeds in now. Nature's really cool. So putting in the seeds, they're going to kind of figure out when's the right time to germinate. They're going to grow slowly, so they're going to germinate, and they're going to get these beautiful root systems, and they kind of peak out when the temperatures are right. Because they're just breaking the surface, the first leaves that come out, I think it's the cotyledons, they're really strong. They're not the true leaves. And even if they get hit by a little bit of frost, they're usually not damaged early on. So I would go ahead and start with it. If you were putting in transplants and they've been all cushy, growing in a cushy environment inside, and then you bring them out and it's cold, they struggle a little bit. But when you direct seed, you end up with a stronger plant. And as we wrap up, again, if you have a burning question, I will answer the super chats as soon as they pop up. It's getting crazy. Can I plant tomatoes where I had potatoes last year? What happens if I do? You can, 100%. We talked about earlier, rotating crops in a small home garden really doesn't make a difference. Just prep the soil well, get it some organic matter, compost in there, get them the nutrients, and they're good to go. Okay, how many peppers can I plant in a 5-gallon, 10-gallon container? So years ago, I grew one pepper in a 2.5-gallon container. The smaller the container, the more you have to water, the more you have to feed them. In a 5-gallon container, you could definitely grow 2 pepper plants. In a 10-gallon container, you could grow 3 or 4. Now, as you increase the number of plants, when they're full size and you get summer and heat, you have to keep up with the watering and stuff like that. I make my own vermicompost. Karen is a perk member. How important is it that I remove every worm? It's not. I mean, the worms will just, sometimes we have different worms in our vermicompost, but you can, let them be in your garden. And the reason I say that is because there's probably eggs and stuff and like that, and smaller worms you can't see, so they're getting tossed wherever you place that. Misty, started bell peppers inside. Leaves are now yellow and falling off. What am I doing wrong? That's always tough to answer, but the basic response I give is make sure you're not keeping the soil oversaturated and wet too much. Soil always dries from the top down, so let the top dry and become a light brown. there's still moisture below. That drying period does help the peppers do better. If you haven't fertilized them recently with a water-soluble fertilizer, give them a water-soluble fertilizer. Those two things should help. Rose, can I bring my winter butter squash transplant plants outdoors without getting them used to the weather, since they are cold hardy? Well, I'm glad you put it back out there. So you can, but they're cold hardy. And like I was saying about the seeds, if they've been growing outside, they're used to the temperature and the cold, and they're growing into that temperature and that cold. Indoors, they've been kind of hanging out like they're on vacation in the tropics. So you still have to acclimate any plant that's coming from outside, inside to the outside. And that's like, 15, 20, 30 minutes the first day, longer the next day, and you have to do it over a 7-day period. So they do have to get used to the UV rays of the sun, and they do have to get used to the temperatures. FJ, yes, you can use a rusted trellis for your cucumbers. I have rust everywhere. Question, my patio has some shade from an awning. If the tops of my plants get sun, is that good enough for the plants that need full sun? Or should I add grow lights outside or foil or something to reflect? So it really matters how much sun they're getting. I wouldn't add grow lights. I think that can get expensive and tricky with water and rain, and it's not going to do that much. So if I totally understand, if the tops are getting sun and it's, close to that 8 hours, they should be okay. Really, the best thing to do is experiment, keep an eye on them, see how they do. That's the only way you're going to know. And the reason is you hear so much. Well, this plant can do okay with 6 hours, and this plant needs 8 hours, and this plant maybe 4 to 6 hours. It also depends on the intensity of the sun. So if you're talking about just morning sun on the top, that's not as good as sun from 10 to 4 p.m. If it's getting the 10 to 4 p.m. sun on the top, that's nice and intense, and they're going to do okay. They could be shaded more in the morning. As the sun gets higher, it comes in, it hits them, and they're going to be okay. Leslie, I would appreciate recommendations of plants that may help keep cats out of my garden. I can't do water or fencing right now. Thank you. I wish there was a plant that would do that. I don't know of any. I also don't think there are really many that would do that. Animals know what to do. They'll come in. Plants themselves, certain scents do, but the scents aren't really effective unless they're kind of broken and getting around, the aromas filling the air. So I wish I had a recommendation for you. Bill, should I try something different than hydrogen peroxide and baking soda if my leaf spot keeps returning despite treatments? Yeah, you could. So the H2O2, you might try more often, and then when the temperatures change and you get through the septora period of when they like to grow, you're okay. But stuff can keep coming back because the H2O2 doesn't stay on the leaf. Maybe the baking soda isn't effective. So yes, I would try the copper spray too. And that's a good strategy. You've tried something, H2O2, hydrogen peroxide, I would keep using, and then I would swap copper for baking soda. Marie, why my plant leaves have holes in them? What should I do? Insects, could be flea beetles. Insect dust works. I have to see what it is. You want to try and find the insect. But if there's tiny holes in it, that's often flea beetles, and I use spinosad, which is organic, to manage that. Country living, getting yellow leaves on tomato starts, planted too early, but they seem to be growing well otherwise. Also, cabbage started good, then died all of a sudden. Thanks. So sometimes cabbage, the root systems can get attacked. If your tomatoes seem to be doing okay, well, let me go back. So these are starts. So maybe they're still growing in containers. So feeding the tomato plants will make a difference. Uppotting them can make a difference. Cabbage, if they were in containers, again, it could be overly wet soil that can cause root rot. That's usually the biggest issue with seed starts, is the soil is staying too wet. You always want that top of the seed starting mix to turn to that light brown and dry, because the seed starting mix always dries from the top down. All right, where are we at? 6 minutes left. Let me see where we are. All right. Rolling back here. All right, I'm not going to be able to get to everybody's questions. All right, here we are. Prayer. In Massachusetts, we have the Asian jumping worms. It degrades the soil. You wrote soul, but I would agree. It degrades the soil and the soul because it's so heartbreaking. Have you heard of them, and do you have a remedy? I have heard of them. We don't have them here yet. There is no remedy that I know of. Winters do kill them off if it's severe enough, but they are a problem. And what they do is they don't add much to the soil, and they eat a lot of organic matter. So, a heavier use of fertilizer can help. Adding in more organic matter can help, but they are a problem, and I don't know of a solution, and I've not really heard of anything that is helping with that. Homeschool Hub. When is the best time to thin my carrot plants? They're about an inch tall. Also, how many inches do I leave between each plant? So now is a great time to thin them. I plant my carrots about an inch apart, something like that. Depends on what you're growing. Like short carrots, about an inch. If they're larger carrots, 2 inches is too much. You're losing space. So an inch or an inch and a half, I would also experiment. I always say that because you'll see all kinds of spacing, 4 to 6 inches, 6 to 8 inches, 4 to 8 inches between rows, 6 to 12 inches. That might be optimal when we have lots of space, or had lots of space and we can plant things out. I tend to plant things more closely together and they do fine. You just kind of have to mess around with it. But definitely an inch, I think, would be fine for any carrot. Question, what's the best mulch for vegetable gardens? Grass clippings are fine. Untreated grass clippings that you're not spraying anything on. They work really well. They break down. Worms eat them. They love them. If you want to use leaves, that works as long as they don't blow away. If you want to buy something triple shredded, really fine wood, shredded wood works well. It's probably the best, and it will get broken down by, microbes and such. Barb. Temperature in my area went to 31, 32 degrees last night. My apple tree has buds and flowers on them. Have I lost getting the apples this year? It is possible. If the tree is up higher, sometimes the cold weather settles at the ground level and frost comes. So if they weren't frostbitten for a long period of time, there's a good chance that you're okay. 31, 32 is tough. If it got into 28 and it was for 3 or 4 hours, then you probably were in trouble. Question, Dorothy, what cultivars of blackberries do you grow? I live near you in Maryland. You mentioned in a video that you can fit them in and won't spread too much. Is this still the case for you? So the variety of, and I'm going to be finishing up in 2 minutes, the variety that I grow are Arapaho, and there might be one called Apache. The people that are making them are naming them after Native American tribes. But they're called clumping or erect varieties, and they're thornless, and they're beautiful because you plant them, they stay within a space. Slowly they creep out over the years, but they don't take over. So you want any clumping variety blackberry, and they're really controllable. So that's what I've been growing. I have them moved. They've moved across the way, but I think they came from seeds being dropped from birds. So the clumping variety blackberries are great. All right. I am going to apologize because I am not going to be able to answer everybody's questions. I will answer a couple more. I do the public live Q&A like today every second and fourth Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. And I also have perk memberships you can join where I do this 4 times a week. My tomato seedlings sprouted only one leaf past the cotyledon leaves. Then they stopped growing. So sometimes that happens if you've not fed them with nitrogen, a water-soluble nitrogen. I would give them a light feeding, maybe half strength. And the reason I say that, like fish emulsion is a 5-1-1 NP and K. It's organic. It's not going to hurt your plants. It does smell inside. Maybe cut it in half so you're getting like a 2 nitrogen. That's plenty. You don't want to overfeed your seed starts because they only have a little bit of soil, and an overconcentration of NP and K can damage your plants. If you're going to use a chemical type like, Miracle Grow, that's a 24 nitrogen. Cut that down by a good quarter, get it down to a 6, something much lower than that. And just replace a watering with the water soluble with nitrogen. Again, the other thing too is make sure you let your soil dry. The top should be a light brown before you water again, and see how that goes. Once you feed them, once you're managing the water, you've really addressed the 2 key things that impact how they're growing. The third piece would be if your temperatures are cold where you're growing, below 60, that can slow them down, but those are the main things. And thank you for the super chat. 12 o'clock. So I'm going to buzz down to the bottom. And I'm going to take one more question. And then I will see you guys next. Well, what are we in? The 4th Thursday? So I will see you in the 2nd Thursday of May. Moon shadow, we'll leave it here. What water-soluble fertilizer do I use after transplanting? So once you plant them into the ground, you can use whatever you want. Seriously, fish emulsion is great. I used Alaska brand. It was a 5-1-1. But now that I have a dog, and a dog that I take and I'm training to be in the garden, she will eat the soil when I use fish emulsion. Fish emulsion also can attract cats. It can attract raccoons. So I use AgroThrive. I'm affiliated with them. Check out my video descriptions. You can get a discount on your first purchase. It's 100% organic. It has a much more pleasant scent, and animals leave it alone, and it's a nicely balanced water soluble. If you don't want to use organic, that can be expensive. Any chemical type works. I still recommend, even in the garden as a transplant, use them at half strength. You just don't need 24 nitrogen on anything, and it'll save you money. Use it at half strength. That's not going to hurt your garden. It's not going to hurt your plant. But I really do like the AgroThrive. All right, it is 12:02. You guys have a great weekend. Good luck in your gardens, and I will see you all next, 2nd Thursday of May at 11 a.m. Thanks for stopping by.